You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact, a podcast that gives you powers, then takes them away again. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This week we have been watching Déjà Q. It was written by Richard Danis and directed by Les Landau. It first aired the week of February the 5th, 1990. James, what happens in this one?
Q is seeking asylum on the Enterprise, having been thrown onto the continuum and stripped of his powers and his clothes. The crew don't trust him, and Picard wants to get some use out of the brig set, so they send him there. In his now vulnerable state, an alien race of energy beings come on board the Enterprise to take revenge on Q for past misdeeds. Meanwhile, a group of cheap-looking aliens on a video screen are worried about their moon crashing down onto their planet. But we're more interested in what's happening with Q.
So, Alex, you hadn't seen this episode before. What did you think of it?
Normally I'd start by joking about the episode, but in this instance I'm going to be sincere. For once in a blue moon. It was good fun. And fun is something we have been desperately in need of for a little while. And I mean, by that I mean actual fun, not enforced fun. Not like a play date where someone brings their kids over to someone else's house on the hope that they might play together, but they just hate each other and one of them punches the other in the face and steals its toys. Yeah.
I think you've got some traumatic memories.
So, the return of Q, would you say that's a welcome development, or do you think it's maybe a little tired? Is it too easy to bring back this character? Do you think that's something worth exploring? Maybe Star Trek doesn't do enough recurring people.
I think essentially the key is just not to overuse it. I mean, it would be all too easy to have it be something that you bring back multiple times a series. You know, I don't know, however many episodes in a 20 plus run of episodes, have Q pop up 5 times or something like that. I think once or twice a series is perfectly fine as long as you find something you can do that's different. Doesn't need to be massively different, just needs to be different enough for you to be able to mine a slightly different end of humour out of it. And I think they did it this time. And actually, some of the serious stuff that came out of it was also quite good. It was secondary to the comedy, but it was still quite good.
I think it definitely helps that John Delancey is pretty great. He's got range. He can do whatever you need him to. He's funny. He can do serious. He can have pathos. And testament to him that you can actually sympathise with Q throughout this episode. A character who is essentially pretty unlikable.
He's definitely a formidable actor. I mean, he's one of the few people I know that could and did appear in Torchwood Miracle Day without looking like they wanted to die.
So, what do you think of the planet we see right at the start?
Braille 4.
It seemed to me, and this might say more about me than the episode itself, but when I first saw those aliens, I thought, they look a little bit racist, don't they?
No, that was very much what I was thinking. Star Wars has the Nemoidians, and this planet has its own racist Pan-Asian aliens.
Braille 4 is pretty inconsequential to the whole episode.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's there to sort of create a ticking clock with the moon going to crash down within an orbit. Never ever explained why. Strange phenomenon. Is it the Q? Is it not? Doesn't really matter. But it's there to create a bit of a threat for the Enterprise. Along with the aliens attacking Q, who are essentially quite rubbish, aren't they?
They're big balls of light.
It's there as something for Picard to mistrust Q over, and believe it's him, yet always missing the opportunity to turn to him and say, "Is this your doing? Is it Q?" Never. No sense of comic timing at all. And essentially they're there for that, and they're there for the bit at the end where they can go, "Oh, thank you, you've saved us," and Picard can go, Yes, I did." That's their only role.
You really need to save us, you know. We're pinning all our hopes on you. You know, you have to save us. Okay, to be fair, their planet is about to be destroyed by their own moon, or at least heavily damaged, and massive tsunamis are coming. But I think you could be a bit nicer about it to the people who are trying to help, even if they are an ant pushing a tricycle.
I mean, if the moon is crashing towards the planet, would that not be the time to maybe evacuate the planet?
I always wonder that in TV shows where something is about to hit the planet. You've got that Futurama episode where the big garbage asteroid is going to hit New York, and they don't at any point think, let's evacuate.
Maybe they don't know in this episode exactly where it's going to come down.
Particularly when they kind of move the trajectory each time they try and move it back into the correct orbit. It would be an amusing idea if they evacuate the place they think it's going to come down, the Enterprise try and save them, but actually just delay it a little bit, and it's going to crash somewhere else where they've just evacuated all of the people to.
That'd be pretty bleak, to be honest.
We didn't think you had enough death last week.
So Q has apparently been evicted by the continuum. This seems fairly consistent, actually, with what's come before in Season 2, where we first saw the Borg. In Q, where apparently he's been expelled by the continuum but retains his powers, and so asked to be part of the Enterprise crew. You never know if that's necessarily true. We don't really know what goes on in the continuum or what form it takes, rather than men who quite like wearing tight-fitting clothing. And Q's sort of obsessed with humanity. He's offered a human powers, and now he's brought down to mortality. I suppose it's an obvious thing to do, but nonetheless pretty effective, because as an audience, we don't know if he's telling the truth, the crew don't know if he's telling the truth, and it also makes this all-powerful character vulnerable for once as well.
Oh no, it definitely works, and it's a good basis to mine some comedy from. And if you've got a lead actor who's very good at delivering those comic lines, and he's got a good line in Gurning as well, play to your strengths, absolutely. And yeah, thank God they did. We were in need of some laughs.
And Brent Spiner hasn't had a great deal to do this season, really, for much of it. And here, it's a very nice relationship. One, actually, that would be replicated on Voyager, where you've got the Doctor, who's a hologram, trying to guide a Borg in the ways of humanity. And here you have an android trying to teach Q how to be human. And that's very nice interplay.
Though, before we get into that, because obviously that's a very big part of the episode, we should perhaps discuss Q's entrance, which is perhaps an unfortunate phrase considering this with the way that he does enter the episode, but that was an interesting choice.
The naked now.
Very good.
I can't claim ownership of that pun.
I can see why they did it, because usually he magics himself a uniform, so he's taken a form. I suppose he would just be the form without any kind of material. That's fine. I guess, again, it's kind of a joke. It's funny. There's a naked man landed on the bridge.
I mean, they've made him essentially human. I mean, have they made him exactly into a man or just into a human form? Essentially, what I'm asking here is Picard's head particularly well placed, or does Q basically have a crotch like an action man?
It's never established. They say he's not mortal because he survived the attack by the weird aliens, so he's more than man, but he's not quite magic.
Also, but when he does get clothes on, they're very tight fitting. And he is walking over, giving his little speech about, I have no powers, cue the ordinary. And as he's doing it, he puts his hands on his hips and sort of struts out his crotch. And actually, that scene there is the greatest suggestion that he does have genitals.
Do you know, Cue the Ordinary is a review that's been left for this podcast on iTunes.
Cue the Ordinary. Well, you say that, but that spandex is very tight-fitting, and I can tell you, it's not the ordinary as far as I've seen.
Okay, I think you need to take a break now.
Okay, well, to get on to a serious note for a minute then, how do we feel about the way the Enterprise treat Q? Is it too harsh?
That's an interesting question, because essentially, in reality, has he done anything particularly wrong? True, he put them on trial for all of the sins of humanity, but maybe that was justified. I mean, humanity has done some pretty bad things. He gave Riker some powers. He turned Wesley into a man.
He killed Wesley by a weird pig soldier thing. He sent Tasha Yar into the penalty box and told her if somebody else is sent into the penalty box, she'll die.
He warned them about the Borg, and 18 of the crew died. So, he's not done anything very bad.
No worse than any normal villain.
It's just a bit of light teasing, really.
I guess Q probably does deserve to be locked up, but the whole point of the Enterprise, apparently, is to discover new life forms, and the opportunity to learn something from this fallen god should be too intriguing to resist, really, rather than they treat him like the irritating comedy neighbour.
But they don't want to play along with his games. That's the thing. All this time, they've been forced to play his games of hide and Q, which is apparently a game, and be sent to the Delta Quadrant and have 18 of your crew killed. They don't want to play along here.
Is that the rules of hide and Q? Go to the Delta Quadrant, no one will come to look for you.
It probably is justified, because everyone's a little tense around him, and they don't really buy it.
Essentially, a large part of the reason for them acting that way seems to be that it allows the writer to play with some elements of hubris, that by the end of it they have that realisation of, oh no, he was telling the truth, and maybe he did understand a bit more about humanity than we thought. But there were definitely moments along the way where I was thinking, Picard, you're being a bit of a dick.
The thing is, if Q is lying and he still has his powers and he's voluntarily going into the brig, then this is essentially all part of his games, so they're playing along either way.
If he still has his powers, what's the point of locking him in the brig? I mean, there's literally no benefit to it. And why is the man manning the brig so completely unconcerned when this bizarre smoke alien beams into the cell?
Maybe they have a crew member of the same species. We just never see them.
What, Bill? We keep him down in engineering. He's not much use. He doesn't have any hands. Besides which, the Enterprise is essentially a non-smoking zone. He says it's racist. I think he's a little overzealous, personally.
He's the toilet attendant.
You don't want a smoky toilet. That suggests a terrible thing. Although I suppose it would burn off the smell.
I suppose the most prominent scene in the episode, or the one that stands out, is in 10 Forward. And he orders 10 chocolate sundaes, because that's apparently the only food I think you can get served on the Enterprise. Chocolate? Is
when
that about it?
When Councillor Troy is sad, she likes to eat something chocolatey. I bet she does. Because she's a woman. You know, that's what they like, those women. You know what I mean, lads? Yes. Have I told you about my mother-in-law?
To be fair, they have already established that Councillor Troy likes chocolate. That's her one character trait that they've established up to this point.
The appearance of Guinan, I think, is significant. I wasn't sure that she was in this episode. I didn't remember her being in this episode, and she appears and taunts him slightly.
When was she last in an episode? It seems like ages since we've seen her.
In like the last 4 episodes, she gave some advice. I distinctly remember that. I just can't remember what the advice was.
I mean, giving advice doesn't stick in the mind. Stabbing someone in the hand with a fork definitely does. I mean, that was out of nowhere.
But it proves he's mortal.
Yeah, but I mean, if he is mortal, that wasn't like just a little pin or something. That was a big metal spiky fork. That would leave big puncture holes straight through your hand.
And it wasn't played for comedy. Because it is horrible, but it's established in this scene that Guinan knows who Q is and doesn't like him.
Yeah, the whole thing with Guinan being uber powerful as well, it's not ever explored much. It's all kept incredibly vague. And I'm not sure I really buy that she's a match for Q ever.
And one thing I certainly don't buy is that if someone has a bit of a back problem, that the ship's chief medical officer will come to rub some ointment into your back.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
They don't have a lot of medical problems in the future, so she can do call-outs.
Is she not still haunted by her trauma of being kidnapped?
No, that was last week.
Alright, okay. She's over that now.
I mean, to be fair, even in better episodes, they have one episode of Deep Space Nine where O'Brien suffers about 30 years of being in solitary confinement and then wakes up about an hour later, and it's only actually been an hour because the 30 years were in his mind, and that's forgotten about the next week.
Yeah. I might have written about that, you know.
Hey, if Spock can die and come back, like Jesus, and only have one film of memory lapse...
I was never fully clear on whether his memory properly came back. I mean, Uhura in the original series, she loses her memory, but is re-educated by the end of the episode.
Oh, Christ, that happened, didn't it?
And,
What series was that in?
It's like, you know, she didn't know that much, so in the space of an afternoon you could teach her how to answer the phone.
That's why by Star Trek 6 she can't speak any Klingon and has to go to the books.
Yep, that's it.
Why do they have books on board the Enterprise rather than...
Don't ask these questions. So, eventually, because this problem the Enterprise is facing is so insurmountable, this moon crashing into this planet, they ask Q for help. I suppose that was always going to be the case. I don't think we were going to have the episode where they don't have to work together for the greater good. It would have been boring to keep them in the brig the whole time. So you need this problem to spark that cooperation, a coalition.
And he got a good laugh out of it as well. I mean, I liked the bit of how do you do that? Oh, it's simple. You just warp reality. We can't do that. Oh God, yes, you are very limited, or however it goes. Oh yeah, that's a good moment. That's pretty much exactly what I want to see from this episode. And that's part of the reason why the pairing of Q and Data works so well. We've had so many episodes previously with Data struggling with what it means to be human, and what he can't experience. So to pair him with Q in this episode, it works wonderfully well. And it gives a chance for both that comedy that we want, especially in scenes like in 10 Forward, but also those slightly more thoughtful moments interspersed. We don't have massive gear shifts from one scene to the next. It's all very delicately balanced. It's good.
What about Q himself? I suppose he acts like a human. He sees the error of his ways and decides to sacrifice himself for the good of the crew, something you never thought he would actually ever do. The ultimate selfish being. Do you think that's arrived at in a satisfying way, or is it a bit, well, it's Star Trek, he's probably always going to do that?
Well, what I want to know is why suddenly there's no longer security keeping him on the ship. He has security leading him around the ship in one scene, and then in the very next scene, he can just walk out the door freely, and then find a shuttlecraft, and then leave the ship.
What do you write for? The Nitpicker's Guide?
I bet that's in the Nitpicker's Guide, you know. If that isn't, then they're not doing their job.
Let's find out. Hold on. No, it's not in the Nitpicker's Guide. They're just very hung up on why Data taps his badge.
They could have done a scene where Q pushes the guard out the way and runs down the hall, kind of heroically. They didn't need to be fair, because I'm just being pedantic.
That's fair enough. I mean, in general, as we've seen in the past, it's very easy to steal a shuttle.
Yes, a child can steal a shuttle.
A child can steal a shuttle. There's no security protocols on anything, which I feel is not great.
It's only when they look at the schedule and see that there's not supposed to be a shuttlecraft out today that they realise that somebody has stolen one.
He goes out and he sacrifices himself. I think that works pretty well, to be honest. He does establish a rapport with these people. You can tell he does like tormenting them, so I think for him to not want to see them die, that's fair enough. I think it works in this episode, certainly.
I like the fact that they play it slightly vague. Although he says to Q2, I was basically just doing it out of reasons of cowardice. You're never certain if he's being genuine or if he's just trying to lie to the person who got him kicked out of the Q continuum. And I like that fact. The fact that you just, like Picard at the end of the episode, you slightly start to question just how much he's learnt from his time as a human.
Star Trek is all about exploring what it means to be human. And this episode does it very well, to be honest. It's fun, it's playful, it's entertaining, it's light, certainly. I enjoyed it. What do you think of the
I like that it's a light episode which has a moon about to crash into a ship and kill millions of people. The nice light and fluffy
but
episode.
It is. That is so much in the background, it might as well not be happening. I don't think we've seen anyone else from the Q Continuum before, and we see another kind of smarmy guy coming on. Did you like that?
I thought it was fine. I suppose it's the logical get out, really, isn't it? In some respects, the easy thing for the episode to do would have been to get to the end, and it turns out no, Q was having them on all along, and to have Picard turn around and go, "Oh, Q."
Freeze frame.
So I I was kind of pleased that they said at the end, no, it was actually genuine, and so it gives you that moment where you can have some serious thought about what it's all meant for Q. What I liked was the fact that in doing it, they were fairly brief with it. They play with it just enough. I kind of feel that we don't ever want to know too much about the makeup of the Q Continuum, how it works.
So you wouldn't want to go to their home in a future episode of a spin-off?
I mean, you don't want to write anything off, But I kind of feel about it the same way I feel about the Doctor's history in Doctor Who. You can play around with bits of it, you can certainly show things from it, but you don't ever want to give the definitive answers. You don't want to say what his actual name is, what was the reason that caused him to leave his home planet.
To be fair, they do it very well when they eventually show the Q home. It's not. No, I just can't think of any other way of describing it because it's not a planet.
It's a continuum. At the very end, Q, because of his noble sacrifice, gets his powers back, and then appears on the bridge. Some quite broad comedy in there, wasn't there?
There was, but then this is the character that allows you to do it. And in some respects, it could have gone bigger than it was. But I did particularly enjoy seeing Picard go to, say, engage, and as he goes to put his fingers forward in that usual motion, a cigar suddenly appears in between. That is a perfect example of taking something that has become a regular part of the show and subverting it. That's what I like to see.
And Data finding something very amusing.
That I liked less.
To be fair, I did like the bit where Brent Spiner kind of goes to point out what he's laughing at. He kind of has that little moment where he's about to point out what he's laughing at, and then he just goes, I do not know.
To be honest, that idea is fine, and the fact that he doesn't know is fine. It was just Brent Spiner's performance there was a little OTT for my tastes. That's actually what I thought Q was going to grant him. I thought Q was going to grant him the ability to taste food. And the episode would end with Data eating 10 chocolate sundaes. Which, now I say it, I think I would have actually liked to see as the ending slightly more. And everyone else trying to match him Sunday for Sunday. But because he can't get sick, everyone else is looking very ill.
At least he didn't turn Data into a human like he did Wesley that time.
Yeah, that would have been bad. Especially because, well, it would have happened and then it would have been undone again within the space of 30 seconds at that point.
Though, to be fair, that was Riker. The Q Riker.
Let's bring this to an end and go and visit Quickfire.
Quickfire.
Best known for his well-regarded performances as divorce attorney Arnie Becker on LA Law, Corbin Burnson has said that he took the role of Q2 not so much as a fan of Trek, but to be part of its legacy and its humanistic outlook. And I'm certain the money played no part in it.
I don't think they pay that well. Melinda Snodgrass said, I always think of Q as Loki. He's chaos. Maury Hurley always thought,
Q is here to teach us a lesson, to guide us, and instruct us.
I can understand that to some extent, but I really see him as a mischief maker. He's really just wants to foul Picard's head.
The zombie of Maurice Hurley returning there.
Brains.
But in contrast to that, Michael Piller said, our first take on it was that Q lost his powers, came on board, and we developed a whole story about how we were about to come into war with the Klingons. It turns out that Q didn't really lose his powers after all, he was just playing with us and pulling our strings. It wasn't a bad story, but ultimately we sat down with Gene and Rick, and Gene said, if you're going to do a story, godlike and brought to Earth, then do it. Do a story about what it's like to lose everything that you are and having to discover your own humanity. He kind of threw cold water on us and suggested we do it straightforward, and that's what we did. That's a really good story note from Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah, fair play to him. For once, he's got it right.
And when you do it, make sure they're all in really tight clothing. And a naked guy. I'm just marvelling at Star Trek 365. It seems to have all gone a bit weird. I mean, it's put in Dan Curry's preliminary sketch of Q's surprise appearance. which kind of looks like something you see popping up on Tumblr. I'll be honest, the pencil line drawing. And then the photo beside it is captioned, Patrick Stewart chats up Brent Spiner. Wow. It's all gone a bit slash fiction. So when Q beams aboard the ship, and he has his mariachi band, and he gives Picard and Riker cigars, and says, "Don't fret, Riker, my good fortune is your good fortune," and projects out a couple of women for him, to which Riker says, "I don't need your fantasy women." Really, Will? Because I kind of remember when you spent a lot of time on the holodeck playing an imaginary trombone to chat up an imaginary woman.
That was before he had the beard.
So he takes the women away from Riker and gives them to Worf. I don't hear Worf doing a lot of complaining. Riker, "I don't need your fantasy women." Worf, "I'm okay with this." "Hey guys, how about one of them cigars?"
Where's he?
I don't know what that accent did then.
"Hi, I'm Lieutenant Worf."
"Hey, you guys. I got the women, you got the mariachi band. How about we smoke some cigars? After all, I'm a Klingon."
And you said the Braille 4 aliens were racist. You should look in a mirror and feel shame.
"Would you like to do the tea ceremony?"
As a Klingon, I of course have a barbed penis, unlike you who have none. You know, many people say I have a head like a kebab.
And now it's time to count down the top 10 coupons not used in episodes. And at number 10, it's Guess Q's Coming to Dinner. Up 2 places at 9. What's that, Alex?
Q do you think you are?
Holding steady at 8. Do you need a tissue, James?
Q!
And at 7, he's head of the house. It's Q Bonneville. At 6, dropping 4 places, is everyone's favourite sequel.
Q Fast, Q Furious.
And at 5, James, is there someone at the door?
Knock knock. Q's there.
New entry in at 4, and it's time to say goodbye.
A Q, to you, and you, and you.
Coming into that all-important top 3 now, and it's a rock classic with We Will Rock Q. At number 2, it's the investigation that nobody's talking about.
Operation Q Tree.
And at number 1 for the 5th consecutive week, it's Dial Q for Quarter. Well, that wraps up another episode, but we will be back again very soon talking about a matter of perspective. Until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. I mean, they've made him essentially human. I mean, have they made him exactly into a man or just into a human form? Essentially, what I'm asking here is Picard's head particularly well placed, or does Q basically have a crotch like an action man? And I mean, considering all of the other little elements and things he complains about, at no point does he need to go and take a leak, so far as we see. And you know, if you've never had to before, the sudden expelling of liquid from your body would probably be worth comment.
There's just one toilet in the middle of the ship, and it's got a big queue, and Q's at the back of the queue.